The world is changed.
I feel it in the water. I feel it in the earth. I smell it in the air. Much that once was is lost, for none now live who remember it.
Do not put your material shoes on the holy water.
For him, being underwater is as familiar as breathing air.
Water has memory. The water that makes up you and me has passed through at least 4 humans and or animals before us.
We're gonna need more holy water.
Death lies before us as we sail for the fountain of youth.
Water can give life, and water can take life. But all water has perfect memory.
What are you doing?
Making mac and cheese.
There's no water, dummy. We're in outer space.
Is that holy water?
Yeah, it's the baptismal well.
Yeah, I think so.
Good, because you already started recording.
You're the worst.
I always do that crap.
Hey, y'all.
Howdy.
Ricky
Wow.
sprung it on me.
That's right. I was like, bam. I was like, are you ready? And she was like, yeah, I guess so.
I was like,
As
let
she
me
was
check
saying
my hair. Never mind. He had already started it. So this is the hair you get. No, obviously I don't care about my hair. And I go with
because you go
happy chic, messed up. I
with
like
the
I just
flow.
I can't be nicely coiffed. That is just not within my personality. I've tried and it doesn't work. Oh, look, do you see the cat here?
How about this one for you? Dude, with this new computer, guys, I should give you some updates. Sorry. I have a new computer, and then my internet died. And then we were trying to record, like we had this ready, like a week and a half ago? Like we were going to do this
10 days.
Thursday or Friday, so that this would be out by Monday of this week that's already gone and passed. And my internet died. And then when we were finally getting to a point where we could sort of record and it wouldn't sound terrible, Shell gets sick and got overwhelmed with work. And so did I, frankly. I was just like, dude, I'm exhausted, but let's do it. And then we just couldn't. It just didn't happen. So
yeah, you know what, though? It was really cool. Like I opened up Bosse book today because no, it wasn't Holly. It was before Holly. It was Roseanne. Had done I guess an answer, and then I saw that you had posted, and Danny had said something. He was like, "I saw you didn't post last night," and I was like, "Babe, I just didn't feel good." Because Danny, my husband, is still out of town. He gets back tomorrow night. I'm very excited. No, tomorrow's Friday. He gets back Saturday night. Still, it's really close. Really close.
Yeah. Well, but that's it's going to work out good because we're going to do this one today, and then we're going to do our Cosmovision. Yes, we're doing a Cosmovision, guys. I know we've been slacking it for a while, but we got one tomorrow.
Excited.
We are excited. I don't want to give what we're talking about because it's very cool.
It's real cool.
Because we're not going to drop it at the same time. So.
But anyhow, so I open up the Facebook, right? And I see that you were like, "Hey guys, sorry, technical difficulties, but would you pray for Shelly and I?" And I was just like, "Oh," and then Roseanne did, and I was like, "Oh my goodness." And you had already responded to her, and I was just like, "Hey, thanks." And then Holly, and I was like, "Hey, thanks." And then after that, I went to work, guys, and I'm really sorry I have not looked at my phone.
Commented and liked it and stuff. If that's just, man, I just want to thank you guys.
Thank you, you guys. Like, it's a big deal.
Yeah, it is a big deal. It's a really big deal. Like, and then the fact that generates enough algorithmic pull for people to come and look at it, even if you're on. So I've learned this. I'm like being behind the scenes. I've learned this. If you post something and it doesn't have sway, it does not get promoted, man. Whether or not
No.
you put it on your page and people follow you, they don't see it. That's happened several times. And in this case, man, it was just, a lot of love and a lot of outpouring. So thank you guys. It was really crazy to see that Roseanne was like, oh, I was thinking God put me, basically God put me on you guys on my heart. I was like, what? That's so cool. She's like, I was thinking about you guys this morning.
Like, I love that. I pray for people like so randomly, people who don't know me, have never met me, won't know me maybe until heaven, And I really think God honors that when he puts somebody, just across our path, on an electronic device or whatever, and we're just like, Lord, touch that person.
Yeah.
If they don't know you, help them to know you. If they do know you, remind them that you love them. Just like those little things, like there are people, and I know we've talked about it before, people we pray for, like Joe Rogan, Tim Pool. There and a few others that we pray for, and we want to see them saved. Russell Brand for me
watch
is
him a while. I need to go check his stuff out.
Dude, I want that guy to know Jesus, and he's close, but he's also, there are those counterfeits that are right there.
Watchified.
But I really appreciate that, because I know God honors it.
Yeah.
And to be counted among those people, that's just so cool to me.
It is very cool. It's cool that God puts people like us on you guys' heart. That's really crazy to me. But it was also cool because I realized, I was like, I really need to pray for the people that like support us and follow us. Like they have all sorts of stuff going on too. And so I started making that mental connection, that spiritual connection in my brain. And it's good stuff.
I do that because it's really important to me. There are a few people who follow us that I pray for quite a bit. They're part of my prayer life.
That's awesome.
But I saw this thing because I am consumed with Israel right now, as I imagine most people are, but I could be wrong, and it may just be passing people by. But I got a thing in my email today asking, would you pray for Jaque, I think is who it was. He's a Messianic Christian. He was called up, when
name.
Right, whatever. And it's what it is.
Yeah.
But and it was like, pray for him. He's a Messianic Jew, and he's been called up. He has the opportunity to, show his faith, basically. And I was like, dude, yeah, I will totally pray for him. And it wasn't like a send money or anything else, but it was like, start your own prayer wall where you pray for people. And I have this stuff I would show you, but it would require moving my camera. But I have on the back of my door over here a paper that is chalk paper. And I have a new one because I had my old one and it moved here with us because there are things I was praying for, people I was praying for, and I have not been doing that. I've been I keep a book in my purse at all times, and the people I'm praying for, I write them in the book with the date. And if I don't have that book with me, then I'm not going to lie, I don't belong to the Apple family of phone users. I have a phone that has a cool stylus because my husband really likes Galaxy Notes, whatever. But I'll just, jot down a note on my phone about who I'm praying for and then later on move it over. But I decided I'm going to go back to doing a prayer wall. I like that. And so, guys, if you want to be on that prayer wall at any time, you don't have to share anything other than pray for me, or you can share whatever you want to. It will be in confidence. You can DM us, and we will pray. And both Ricky and I are prayers. It weirds me out when people are like, "Oh, you're a prayer warrior," and I'm like, "Okay." I mean,
I don't like that
but it
phraseology
sounds
either.
so
I've never
weird.
liked that. It just reminds me of the Bible Belt, to be honest.
Yeah. Oh, you're such a prayer warrior, and I'm like,
you're a prayer warrior, brother.
But I mean, also, the effectual, fervent prayer of the righteous makes much power available. So,
indeed.
I mean, and which is why I pray. Simply, I pray because I'm powerless. Like 99.99999% of the time, really, I'm pretty powerless. I don't even know that I can take a breath, but God gives it to me, So I pray out of desperation, really. That's why I pray, because I can't do anything and I see so much that kills me, and I've been so overwhelmed with what's going on in the world, with Israel, with the news, just with stuff, that life has been heavy for me lately. This is a year where I've lost a lot of people, kind of what I would term spiritual aunts and uncles, and some family members. They're pretty close. So it's that's been hard for me. And I know it's part of life. It is what it is. And I know life is difficult, is what it is, this present suffering. But I know that whatever it is, I can pray about it. I can pray in the spirit on all occasions with all kinds of prayers and requests. And with this in mind, I'll always be alert and keep on praying for all the saints, It's out of need. I have a need to pray, and that is why I pray. And I assume that's why Ricky prays, but it doesn't matter. Like when Ricky prays for you, though, dude, it's so cool. I love when Ricky prays for me. Like, I swear to you.
Cheesy
it's always, and what do you always say at the beginning of your prayers when you're praying? Lord, thank you for this magnificent day. Like, I'm going to go back and look. I'm going to show you in our Marcos, but you say that a lot.
Do I really?
This glorious day.
Yeah, that's probably the one. That sounds more like
it might be glorious, yeah. But so it's cool when Ricky prays for you. It's a good thing. I don't know. People like when I pray for them. I'm just like, oh, Chuck.
I do, because you know how to say stuff well.
I do know how to say stuff well.
God
gave me that ability. I don't know.
Kind of a lame way of explaining that you're eloquent, because I have other words, but I chose to say stuff well. Go me. Good one, bro.
I also kind of like I say stuff well. That works. Yeah.
You say stuff right well.
You word good.
Your words work. They do the things.
Nonetheless, guys, I promise, anytime you want your need prayer, reach out to us. But even if you don't, like I said, we make a concerted effort
Indeed
to pray for the people in our lives who matter to us. And if we have had communication with you, chances are good we have also prayed for you. Even if it's been, Lord, show that idiot why he's wrong. Yeah.
Dang.
No, we may not have prayed that way. I might have prayed that way on occasion, though.
I mean, I prayed that way too. I'd be remiss if I didn't call a spade a spade.
Yeah, but We're ever so grateful for y'all. Like
Yes.
truly. And I just want to say thank you, you guys, because I have a cold and it's been a week. Like Monday at 10 a.m. It was like, oh, it's been such a long week, and been 3 hours at work. So
Sheesh. Yeah.
when it's one of those,
But it's all good because we're here now. We're gonna
we
do this.
are.
Guys, we're going to be talking about some cool stuff today. Sorry for that real long intro. It's only sort of sorry because that's just the way we are.
Yeah, we always do long intros. You
we
know where
do.
to find us. If not, check out some of the stuff at the bottom of our screens. Figure it out. We know
Don't worry,
y'all smart.
I'm gonna tell you exactly where you can click on this time. If you don't want to hear us ramble for the beginning, then you can do that.
Like and share us, beat the algorithm, blah, 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 blah. If you don't like what we have to say, please click the thumbs up button twice.
There you go.
No,
Geez, Shelley,
or
you
is
just
it
knocked
the
it out of the way.
thumbs down button twice? Whatever. Oh, I don't remember now.
So obviously you guys can see, all the stuff, solo.to/CTDW, Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, which is very, very slowly being uploaded. Obviously I haven't had a whole lot of time to do a whole lot of anything. So bear with us in that respect. And if you guys would like to sign up for $3, only $3 tiny dollars, you can do so on Spotify or you can do so on Patreon and get in the loop. I would recommend Patreon. Actually, we probably don't make as much money with you guys going over there, but I actually don't care. You guys stay a little bit more in the loop that way, but you're welcome to sign up on Spotify as well. I send out the information for every episode to keep you guys in the know. And if there's anything that's behind the paywall or you get early access, I send that to you guys by email. If you are not a Patreon subscriber, you will also get it by email automatically. So that is the way that works.
For all you bad apple people out there.
Bad apples?
Bad apples.
Okay. All right.
Should they be doing whatever you do at Apple Play? Like, I don't have an iPhone, you guys.
What are you saying, Shell? Are you asking? Oh, you can follow us on Apple, Apple, on iTunes.
Rate
it's not
us
iTunes anymore, whatever it is, the equivalent. I can't remember what it's called. But you can follow us. Apple Podcast. That's what it's called. I'm sorry, I forgot what it's called. For a second. Yeah, you can follow us there. Absolutely. You can follow us there and get the same updates that you would normally get. So absolutely, you can do that. Absolutely. So do that. Go over and follow us if you're not doing so already. Subscribe for $3 on Patreon or Spotify. And we'll let you know in the future how everything else is going, if going at all. That brings me to our next point. We are talking today about it doesn't sound very cool in Spanish like that. Sounds kind of cheesy. We're talking about water today, guys. And you're water is amazing. There are multiple states of water, and there are multiple bajillions of things that can happen with water. You can also drink it, which I will be doing shortly.
You can.
But in particular, we are talking about sacred water and the potential discussion of portals in or through water, and there will be around water. Yeah, because as you will see, it is not necessarily my opinion that water itself is a portal, although I do not rule out that possibility because there are some pretty interesting occurrences, or at least, I don't want to call them myths or legends, but at least oral traditions, at the very least, right, of water being a type of gateway. So,
we'll talk about a few.
Indeed.
Dude, do you know I did not put the Red Sea in there at all?
Did you not? Hey, hold on. Before we go any further, I'm going to be the fact checker today. Way back when we were talking about, it was one of the very first episodes we did when we did that one with Kelsey about praying through the pain.
Mm-hmm.
And then I told you guys that the water was congealed in its depths, and then I said that means frozen. I literally went and looked it up not that long ago in English because it's like, oh, maybe that's just Spanish. Or maybe it's just, a false cognate or something like that. No, sure enough, it does mean to freeze. It means for the molecules to slow down and stop being active. So if that's what that means, that's pretty wild. And it's a pretty wild place for that.
So not congeal, but freeze.
Well, congeal is it's because the word in Spanish is congelar, which literally means to freeze. That's the word we use for freeze, like when something freezes. So that's why I was like, oh, it's congeal. That congeal means to freeze, right? But Kelsey was like, well, that's more of, in scientific terms, more of like a gelatinous type of.
Right. That's yeah.
Which is fine. I mean, I guess that's entirely possible, but I mean, I don't know. That seems like a very amorphous phrase, or maybe we just have multiple meanings for congeal in English.
I mean, yeah, definitely possible. Long story short, God made walls of water stand up and not move and pummel over the children of Israel.
Yes.
Talking about Moses, in case somebody is not tracking with us right here.
Moises.
Well,
I think it changed. Moshe. So, actually, I will say, kind of on that, piggybacking on that thought, water largely, in my opinion, and this is still kind of like the intro idea about what we're talking about today, water is largely not, in my opinion, a portal itself, but rather kind of like a
conduit.
Yeah, it's like a facilitator of types, but it certainly does seem to have to do with death. Water has a lot to do with death. And going between the under and upper world. We'll just leave it.
So as far as it having liminal properties, I have to go with
certainly.
Yes.
Yes.
It is a liminal space. It is a liminal substance.
In frickin' deed. Absolutely. It is absolutely a liminal space, or liminal space facilitator, I guess we could call it. So it's very cool, very, very interesting. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about how that is the case and how we have come to that conclusion. We will also be talking about a rather controversial topic, especially in scientific circles. We always talk about controversial stuff on this podcast, right? Like that's
right.
But
I think that is the point.
It is a point, but it's not intention. I'm not really trying to go out of my way to be intentionally controversial with the following declaration, kind of like a versus science thing. Like that's not what I'm going for.
Well, no, because we don't ever versus science. We
correct.
Are intelligent enough to realize that science just points all of its fingers right back to the science maker.
Right. Oh, that old chestnut, huh? Yeah. So long story short. Oh crap! I just lost my train of thought. We will be talking about water memory. That's what I want to get at. Water memory is a very interesting thing, and it made me question a lot of what water actually is. It was, well, you'll hear in a second that I was coming to interesting conclusions, kind of like, well, is it this? Does it do that? Is there animacy there? Is there non-animacy? What is going on here? Like, what is this thing? And then, once you kind of get through your initial thoughts, you feel like a dummy, but then you have to realize, well, but it's weird, dude. It's really weird. And you don't really know what it means sometimes. Like when you're looking at things, you don't really know what that means. So,
right.
Without further ado,
and there's,
go ahead, Joe.
There's a lot of interesting information out on the internet. We live in the information age. There's so much, and sometimes some of it seems like really plausible until you start digging into.
Yeah. Yeah. All that's very true. Yeah, it was. Geez, just how else can we say it? It was a rather disconcerting journey. It's always funny when we research these topics. Like I'm expecting, it's almost like really like you have a hypothesis and then you do some experimentation and then you come to a conclusion. Like a lot of times I feel like when I do these, especially in this topic in particular, it's been very like trial and error. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm not going to follow my studies this way because that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And so I have to kind of start focusing in like, well, what does this actually really, really mean? And this has been a cool one. Water has been really, really cool. There's like a million other things I'd like to talk about and think about, but we'll see what we get to today. Do you want me to take the reins from here? Or do you want to talk about anything?
Yeah, I think so. No, I think you go first because you've got all the weird stuff, and then
I do have all the weird stuff.
And then I'll ground us back in in scripture eventually, and probably a little bit here and there in between, but
that's fine with me, man. So let's take off at the 24-minute mark.
Now we'll begin.
That's okay. Not gonna feel bad about it. We haven't talked in a while. So
guys, if y'all haven't already figured out to put us on 1.25 or 1.5 and listen to us, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, we're 4 dragons.
Go to your setting and do that, because I listen to almost everybody at least at 1.25, some at 1.5 speeds.
I just thought of a very cool logo for us.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna stylize and finish it, but I'm gonna write out the words in Chinese for 4 dragons.
Cool. Don't forget about it.
The word for verbose, which would be comical as well, but I don't think so. It'd be cool with the other. Anyway,
we like dragon.
So today we're gonna start by talking about a very interesting woman who, if I'm not mistaken, was doing or has been doing or did her PhD on essentially water glyphs, or just interaction with water in general, hydroglyphs as she calls them. But it's a lot more than that, and I'll try and keep it as coherent as I can, because there's quite a bit of information that she talks about that's pretty fascinating, as a matter of fact, but highly divinatory, I would say.
Yeah.
So this woman's name is Veda Austin, and give me 1 second, guys. What's up, Papa? Okay, I'll be there in a second. Okay, kid's ready for bed. Of course he is, right when I start. So Veda Austin is a self-proclaimed hydromancer. So you can, let that guide you as we speak through this. But she really does, as we have begun to see here on the CTDW, science is inextricably linked to spirituality. Mm-hmm. And because that is the case, the path and form that one decides to employ that science, and therefore spirituality, really plays out and has consequences in the real life physical world that we live in. So I'm going to start kind of where she gets her ideas and why she got so interested in water. These thoughts are not fresh, unfortunately, anymore, when we would have had them out and ready to go, but I'll do my best. She basically, what she does, and I'll start from there and then kind of work my way backwards, is she in particular takes water itself and puts it in a petri dish, for the most part, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then she will freeze this water after having some sort of interaction or exposing the water to some sort of thing. She will put this water and freeze it. And she has a very particular, I didn't look up all her information because I think you have to pay for it. And I'm like, I'm not going to pay for this. I'm just going to, take her to word that she does this on her full time. So, she must be very serious about it. You can go and scour the internet.
Read her book.
I'd like to. Yeah, you can read her book. Her book's like $40. And I was like, I'm not going to pay $40 for your book. Sorry, dude. But it was very interesting. And if you guys would like more information, I can buy the book and I can research it. But for the meantime,
you can write. They can. buy the book and research it.
They could also,
but I think they'll find that it gets very woo-woo, and we'll get to the woo-woo point before this episode is done.
Yeah. So,
sorry guys, always a cat around.
Get a cat as long as he's not biting you.
Just
so
wait, he will.
She give her time. She freezes this stuff after exposing it to some sort of, we'll call it stimulus, I guess, or what's the other word Kelsey would use? Catalyst of some sort, right?
Yeah.
And as this water freezes in certain stages of freeze, it reveals something that has to do with the catalyst itself. With the stimulus itself, particularly the stimulus. And in a lot of cases, she's really got to see reflections of images. So she'll see like a staircase if she puts it next to, some stairs, or she'll see that the water will show a picture of a knife if she leaves it there exposed to the knife. And it's very interesting because she doesn't expose the water for very long to a particular image or particular thought. I think it's like 30 seconds, she said, if I remember right. And the water reflects this stuff as it's freezing. And
the frozen water, right?
The frozen water, the water, and it's in particular the stage that she uses is the two outer caps are the bottom and top are frozen because she puts it in a freezer. And so that middle, I guess it don't have to be in a freezer because it would still do the same thing. But the middle section is like what did they call it? I think she called it easy water, which you guys can go and look up yourself, which is kind of like H3O, if I remember right. Yeah, it's interesting. It's a different state of water. And so that state of water seems to like be able to reveal or regurgitate, right? Whatever it's been fed, essentially, right? Or reflect.
Mirror. Reflect is, I think,
So that is particularly interesting. So that in and of itself does prove that water does have some sort of memory. And I'll see if here in a second I can find some images for you guys. Let me talk about how she got down this path. There is a gentleman, a Japanese gentleman. Well, I can't remember if he was I don't want to say pseudoscientist in like the meaning of like he was searching for the esoteric, more like he did it in his off time sort of thing, if I understand right. He would expose water to certain words or ideas, and the water would respond accordingly. So if he would expose the water to, and I've talked about this before, to like heavy metal music, it would be dissonant. The water would freeze and be dissonant and would have a very scattered pattern of crystallization, right, as it froze. And the inverse was true when he would expose it to like classical music. The water would make these beautiful, geometric shapes that would reflect essentially what the water was being fed, I guess, if we're going to call it anything else, which kind of was her basis for like, okay, there does seem to be something here as far as like water having memory. Like clearly there's something here about this, right? Well, that was really interesting. And the guy that I guess really got another guy that got her into it was Laurent. He was he kind of was in the image and geometry base, but all this kind of oh wait, who was this other guy? There's one other guy, I can't remember the guy's name, but he noticed something really interesting. Now this is very, very particularly weird, actually. He got the idea that, and you'll forgive me, I'll have to look up his name later, but he got the idea that water had memory because he walked into, the first time he really thought about this was he walked into a meat market and he found a piece of liver or a liver, right? Like just meat, cold meat for that was frozen or at least really, really cold so that it wouldn't go bad. But it was in the window. You know how like you can walk into a butcher shop and you can see that the glass itself, the pane, is frozen, and it'll cast
has the frost, right?
Correct,
right,
exactly. Well, that frost was revealing an image of the liver, and when there was a heart there that was sitting there for mincemeat or whatever it was going to be used for, it was revealing the image of a heart. on that frost. And I was like, that is super, super interesting. So we already kind of start to see stuff there. Well, let me kind of go further down the rabbit hole with this.
Was that Emoto? Was that
Emoto was the one that
Masaru
exposed
Emoto,
it to,
or was that okay?
he was the one
so
that
it wasn't
exposed it
him.
to like words and the music and stuff like that. He was the one that really, and there's some cool images. If you find some, Shell, you're free to post those. Go for it.
Yeah,
there's some really
got
pretty
some
stuff
up here.
and there's some videos. I'll put some links in our podcast, as well as some short videos you can watch of him doing that kind of thing. And it's very fascinating. It's beautiful. It's beautiful to watch. It's just amazing to watch. So that is we'll call it a superficial reason to believe that water has memory. Now, she is from New Zealand, and I think it is her father that is Maori. And there is a word. There's a word that oh my goodness. The Maorians, is that what we would say? The Maorians? It's a weird way to say that. The people of Maui, or of Maori, sorry. Maori, to clarify my spelling and the word I'm saying, because obviously, I'm not native. So anyway, they have a particular word, which is wairna, I think that's how you say it. And what they believe that there is a type of physical water and a type of spiritual water. Huh. Where have we heard something like that before? Nonetheless, I should mention before we go any further, and Shell will be able to. Thank God they removed that ad. Thank God. Hey, don't cover your mic. We can't hear you.
Sorry.
You're good.
I'm like,
So they have this physical and spiritual sense of water.
I got it, and then it went away. Tell you.
So she already has this idea, this concept of water. And I should mention, and Shell will get more into this, I don't want to steal her thunder too much, but it's interesting that she does not call this water, and that those on Maori do not call the water living water, but they just call it spiritual water. So take that for what it is. Look how cool those are.
So yeah, apparently he said words, and then that's how the water froze.
Yeah. And what's crazy, look at this: polluted water before prayer, polluted water after prayer. That's pretty crazy, man. That's crazy.
It's very things that make you go,
Yeah. Yeah, it sure is, man. So, where it starts to get weird is where she goes down that little bit of road. And then she said something when I was listening to her in an interview, and it was a very fascinating interview. But she says that she allows the water to be her spiritual teacher because it doesn't. If I remember, I don't know if I added this part in there because I was thinking about it, but I think she said because it doesn't. Oh, no, she did say that. She said the water's her spiritual teacher because it doesn't judge. I thought, yeah. What an interesting spiritual teacher. You don't want to have anyone, disciplining you or giving you.
So what are you being taught then?
Correct. What's the yeah. I mean,
because really you're not being taught. So I don't even.
I mean, that's the whole draw of, the Buddhist mindset, and frankly, transcendental meditation and all that, right? Is that there's the removal of self, because self is everything and everything is self. And so there's no accountability to anyone. We're all just sort of this seamless thing, that kind of just inhabits reality. When she said that, I went, you let the water be your spiritual guide? That seems like a poor judge of, what am I trying to say? It seems like a poor decision.
Like not the wisest life choice. Yeah.
But anyway, nonetheless, it's interesting because she herself asked, that she started seeing stuff, and she's like, am I the one that is seeing this in the water, or is the water speaking to me. And I'll get to that in a second. So coming back to the whole hieroglyph thing. Hydroglyph. I keep saying hieroglyph.
Yeah.
It's super smart.
Well, because that's exactly what she was opting for.
Patented and trademarked. So she starts to see what she would call hydroglyphs. And how does she do this? Well, she gets the idea that she, like I mentioned at first, exposes the water to a stairwell, right? So the water sees the stairs and the water repeats the stairs. And sure enough, it looks like stairs. I mean, it really does. And then she decided that she wasn't sure like what that necessarily means, right? What stairway means. And so what did she do? She grabbed a song by Led Zeppelin, which I'm sure you all know, called Stairway to Heaven, and she played that song for the water. And the water, what did it do? It made a stairway, which is pretty fascinating. So she started to come to this understanding that the water, in her mind, the water, and I'm saying in her mind because I'm not necessarily convinced, although a case could be made, and that's where we're going with this. She says, well, okay, let's expose it to something else, maybe not a stairway itself, or like what's going on here. Well, her idea is that she started to notice a sort of polysemic nature in these hydroglyphs. So she was seeing, and basically that is to say, she was seeing different meanings corresponding to a same glyph. Okay. Well, she started saying stuff like climb up. And then what would happen? Stairway. So she was like, okay, all right. So she wrote this glyph out, and now she has dedicated a large portion of her life to writing out these glyphs, to finding out what water is saying. Well, this is a hot take here because I'm going to come back to that question, and she brings up a really interesting point, because she views water through the lens of divinity. She says, is the water living, or rather, is the water manipulating me, or I'm manipulating the water? And I would pose a third option, which is the water being used to manipulate you? Is that what's really happening? Are you being manipulated by someone else using that water? Is that what's really happening?
Right.
So, and this could be a topic for another time, but could the same thing be true about rocks, for that matter? I mean,
or anything else. I mean, there are instances or accounts of things being manipulated, whatever, by spirits, by poltergeists, by telekinesis, whatever the thing is that they think there are material objects that have been acted upon in hauntings, and that type of thing, which I would consider this part of that. So there's my take on it would be that there's spiritual manipulation of physical things there for that. Now, I mean, is there something more? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. God's word doesn't necessarily talk about it. But there's something about water. Jesus says, I am the living water. If you knew who you were talking to, you would have asked me for a drink of living water. And we definitely see water as liminal throughout the Word of God. And there's some very interesting instances with water. And so we'll go into what the Word says more. But I mean, there's something between Dr. Emoto and Miss Austin, and I'm sure there are other people. This bleeds though right over into New Age
It sure does.
ism, like big time.
Yep.
And the thing about New Age is that like it's got this validity to it, and then you're like, oh wait, you know, and I think that's how this was, because at first, like Rick, you were pretty gung ho, man. No, I'm telling you. And then as we
Yeah.
listened to this more, it was like, oh,
Yeah, no.
there's
Well,
something. And you know what though? I think that's part of our walk in
yeah,
life.
good call.
So frequently there's stuff like that. If Eve had been like, yeah, well, that's real cool, but oh yeah, no, thanks. I'm gonna go over and eat from the trees I'm allowed to eat from.
Yeah.
You know, it would have been a different story. So I very often I think that it's a slippery slope.
Certainly. And to clarify kind of what you were saying about how I was looking at this and be like, yeah, it's this, no, it's that. I was, and I've made this statement before, like I think everything is alive. Now I wanna qualify that statement and then come back to it and revisit it with what I think.
Yeah,
with where I'm going with my thoughts
talking
now.
about.
I think it would be cool if that were the case. I think it would be very cool if that were the case, that everything was alive, and because everything worships God. And God says in his word that if we do not cry out and praise him, that the rocks will do it in our place, right? That's where kind of I've gotten that idea. And there's another succession that has happened that makes me think the same thing. And it is an totally extra biblical thing. It's a more modern thing. It has nothing to do with, I mean, it does have to do with the Bible because it's God's word. And so it allows me to filter my worldview, but it's not,
Right.
it's not an ancient thing. It's a new thing. It's a current thing. And that is the testimony by a military soldier about a confrontation with a UFO. And basically,
I know who you're talking about.
You know exactly what I'm talking about. He got stopped on the road. I won't make it super long, but he came in contact with a UFO, like about what if I'm sitting down about 3 feet tall. He was probably about, UFO was probably about right here on him, if not a little bit higher. And he reached out and touched this thing, and he said it
from
felt
inside his car.
He could, as he touched it and rubbed his hand down the side, like back towards himself, touching the UFO, that it felt like a cat's tongue, like that scrapiness, and that when he touched it, that it vibrated inside his whole, like his entire chest cavity.
Again, that's so like cat-like, because obviously we all know I have cats. You've seen at least 2 of them tonight.
Yeah.
But when you pet them and they vibrate, that's what a purr is.
Yes.
A purr is them vibrating bones at the base of their neck.
And that reality made me like, because his testimony was, it felt like this thing was alive. Like he believes that this thing was alive. And that to me was like, wait. That's alive.
I don't think we were planning on going here, but that, no. I mean, that is the whole premise for transhumanism.
Go on.
Is to take a soul and put it into a
soulless
a machine body of some sort, or a conglomeration of biosynthetic body. But
good God, raises all sorts of questions, right? Like if that guy is right, that this thing is alive, then how is it alive? You know, like, is it a type of possession? Right.
Well, I wasn't necessarily thinking to go here either, but then that's Ezekiel's whole wheel within a wheel.
Yes, that's exactly where I was going, which makes me ask, because the God says that the thing is alive. So I'm like, okay,
Right,
well, the thing is
right.
alive, and it doesn't resemble any kind of creature that we can that God even like, not even on the spectrum of creatures that we know about, right? Like we've seen octopi that
Right.
are like at the bottom of Antarctica. There was a species that was just recently discovered, humongous, massive thing. I posted a few weeks ago, big old white, creepy 20 arms, 20 tentacled thing, and that still seems like a creature to me. Like that still seems like something. Even that like anglerfish with that freaking crazy.
Yeah, those are so ugly.
They're terrifying. They're hideous, but they got a
Yeah,
mouth. They got
very.
eyes. They got. But when I think about a wheel within a wheel, I'm like, what the? That sounds like, it really does sound like a spaceship to me. It really does. But then
Or
God
a
says it's alive.
gyroscope, gyroscope, gyroscope.
So that makes me think, and I'm gonna end this rabbit trail right here, and I'll come back to what I was talking about. There's a reason I'm going this way. That makes me think that potentially Elohim have the ability to allow animacy in otherwise non-living objects. That's what that makes me think.
Inanimate objects, possible, possible.
It's a possibility. I'm not. That's just where my brain is at right now with this kind of stuff, and that's what I'm thinking so far. So I'm going to come back to water, and now you'll see why this is relevant. Now I was battling with like, is the freaking water alive? Is it a living thing? I mean, we all say water is life, right? But I mean, but Jesus was the one very specifically says that I am the living water. It was not anyone else. It was not any other old water. It was very specific water, right? That was life, right? There's waters that can allow or facilitate life, but water is not life itself.
And there's the terminology is often because of the movement.
Sure, exactly.
So
yeah, that's
living
right.
waters that are flowing versus waters that are stagnant and unmoving. So there's something to that, like we were talking about the living stones.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe they're living, but could it also be that there's movement going through them, light or energy or life, or I mean, I don't know, because I have not seen the living stones. I've only read, what Ezekiel and John say about them. But I know there's something there. And could they be living? Well, absolutely they could be, because God's imagination like far exceeds mine.
Oh yeah.
My imagination's pretty like meh.
I almost am obligated to do this now, and this will leave you guys with the idea of why I'm torn, I should say, why I'm torn about whether or not everything can be or is alive. And there's a story in the Talmud, and it's about two rabbis that are on their way, I think, to the synagogue, if I'm not mistaken. And you're going to like this one, Shell, because I was going to mention it, I think, last episode, actually.
I bet you're about to talk about the Golem.
I am. And so what do these creatures, what do these two rabbis do? They don't have anything to eat. Well, they speak an animal into existence for themselves to kill and eat. And that concept got pulled down through the ages. And the Golem is actually fairly recent concept, although I do wonder how recent. Based on those Talmudic readings, I can't remember the guy's name. Shoot, I'll have to look it up. I think I have it on hand. I'll be looking while I'm talking here. The theory or the idea was that, well, in the speech is the power of life, which, I mean, obviously God, that's a biblical principle, probably just a spiritual principle in general, right? There's the power of life and death in the tongue. And he he said that that's how, I can't remember the reason that he made it, but that's how a golem came to be. He spoke its life into existence. And actually, Oh, here it is. Here it is. It was a Kabbalist idea that determined that speech permuted the earth into a calf by the formulas in the Sefer Yetzirah, which is the book of creation, and that was where the Kabbalah pulled that from that book. And so they said that, like, when God speaks in Genesis, it's the same kind of idea, and so that was what allowed the Golem to be created. It was back in by Rabbi. Oh, here it is, Rabbi Judah Loew of Prague. Back in 1525, 16 to 1609 is when he lived. So back about 1600s, right around there. So what is my point here? Maybe water itself is not alive. I'm not convinced one way or the other. I am leaning towards it's not. But given all of that information that I just gave you guys, I'm leaning towards the fact that maybe with our words, we have the ability to make things live, or maybe not us. I don't know. But maybe speech or maybe something allows things to come to life.
Right. There is power in our words, and there's logos, but sorry guys, can't move. I think that the view that we can create with our words is taking the power away from God and putting it into the words. And that's where I have a problem with that, right? As a matter of fact, that's what the whole Golem story, it's an incantation that they use, and eventually we'll need to get into what's the difference between prayer and incantation, because they're similar. They are. And I think that we'll end up taking a break in a second, but I'll say this real quick before we do, and that is the difference between witchcraft and not witchcraft. You know, my favorite saying: did you jump the fence, or did you walk around and get to the gate? It's witchcraft things are the things where you jump the fence, you take the shortcut, the easy way out.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really good insight. I'm glad that you said that. It really gives a lot of light, sheds a lot of light onto that. So coming back to this, let's see if there's anything else I want to mention. There is one other thing that I want to mention. What's interesting about, or two things about this before we move on. What's really interesting is that this girl Veda Austin, who does all this research, I was really fascinated by all the stuff she's doing. It is very fascinating. I'm not saying it's not.
It is. No, it is interesting.
And it's worth looking at. It really is worth looking at. Certainly pray about all things, like you all should pray about everything, right? Prayer without ceasing, as the word says. But I really do feel like it's likely that the water, if it truly is alive, or whether it's alive or not is irrelevant. But even if it is truly alive, then the interaction that she's having with it is just like scrying. It's just the same thing.
It's 100% like scrying. It's just it's a snapshot of
it's modern divination.
Scrying. Whereas normal scrying would be, you would see
an image or
image in motion. This is just frozen. I mean, literally, it's freeze frame of the same.
And it's super interesting to me because, I mean, she does call herself a hydromancer, so there's that. But she kind of, like, at one point I was like, "What are you doing?" She said that she set a petri dish by her head when she was sleeping, and she basically used the water in the petri dish as a dream catcher. Like, that's not what she said, but that's exactly what a dream catcher does.
Yeah, that's really what she explained, and I remember that. I was like, "Oh no, thank you very much."
But what was really interesting to me about these hydroglyphs that she talks about, and this is kind of a point that I guess I'll leave off on is that she didn't even mention it, but the other guy that was interviewing her mentioned it. She said that she was trying to make the connection to the names of the gods having to do with water, and that's all good and fine. I mean, it is what it is. But what was interesting to me was that she says that these glyphs were essentially like speaking to her. She would ask the water stuff, and the water would respond to her, very, very divination style. And the glyphs were kind of like ways of responding to her and everything. And one tiny snippet that this interviewer mentions about her that she didn't bring up, and I was like, oh man, I wish I could have freaking heard that story. Like, I would almost pay to just get behind the paywall to listen to this guy
Oh,
do
that's
this
right,
thing.
because he had the second part. Yeah.
He says that she had a dream, I think when she was little, that she was in Antarctica in a cave, and she saw glyphs that were similar to what the water was showing her, like that she was walking through some cave in Antarctica. And I was like, what have we been talking about?
Right. Well, here's the deal too, is that God doesn't tell you to do things or to not do things that aren't real. When he says don't play with divination, that's because divination is real.
Yeah.
Now, are there lots of quacks that aren't? Absolutely.
Sure.
Probably way more than the real deal. But the reason we're told not to play with it is because it is legit. And I know you and I were talking about this, but the Elohim are not subject to time the way we are. If they are not on this planet, they're not stuck in time the same way we are. So they do know the future, at least to some degree. They're not omniscient or omnipotent, so they're not everywhere at once like Yahweh is.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't know everything, but they know the stuff that they interact with in outside of our linear time.
Yeah.
So they can come back and they can tell you, these things, this blah blah blah. And so I think that there's legitimacy to I don't know what's his name, Michel Nostradamus.
Mm-hmm.
He's many of his quatrains have come about. Some of them are so obfuscative that, well, it's very easy to read something into it.
Well,
frankly, some of them are more specific, and I think that the validity comes because that spirit has some knowledge of stuff outside of our timeline that is going to happen in another part of our timeline.
Yeah. I mean, all we got to do is look at quantum physics to know that there is clearly something that they can see that we can't see, because if you can be at two places at once simultaneously and also not,
Schrodinger's cat has validity, for real. So not saying that she's not experiencing anything. I'm just saying the source is not something I want to play with.
But I think she labeled it correctly. It's hydromancy. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's just a modern form of witchcraft that she's doing.
Yeah, and it's really funny. She says that the gods, the spiritual nature of water, or the water itself spiritually, is communicating glyphs, right? Well, what I thought was that it was very funny that she related it to ancient languages being more about feeling the languages than actually like concretely stating the languages. And I was like, well, when you start trying to feel your way through everything, you're going to get kicked in the head or beat to death in the dark. Honestly, that's what's going to happen.
Right. Because our feelings are valid, but they are not reality.
Yeah. And actually, this will be a good segue. There does appear to be something real legit about water's healing us. And that is what we will get to in a scientific perspective, but also in a biblical perspective in just a second. And we'll
Yeah,
be
that's good.
right
There's
back.
lots of healing. Awesome.
Don't go anywhere. We're going to pause for just a second. Cool. Had to lay the kids down for bed. Shelley went to go pee. I also took advantage of the time to go pee and get water. So
The
get
dog
more water.
also went outside.
Water.
Dogs are happy now. The water. Oh gosh.
I will speak nicely to it so that it will be beautiful when it crystallizes and I freeze it. It's not going to become crystallized anytime soon. It's going to be pea water.
I will. I will just enjoy my water that is raspberry lemonade. Man, nice. I love this stuff.
It's good stuff. Okay, coming back to our putting our thinking caps back on. Put your thinking caps on, kids. We are going to be talking about the properties of healing, of waters for healing. Now, I'm going to come at this one actually from a fairly scientific perspective, point of view. I don't know if that's the same thing. I guess it is. And I'll let the experimentation kind of speak for itself. Because this is way more scientific approach to the idea of water memory. I will say as a caveat, I really do believe that water has memory, like we mentioned. I mean, it clearly seems to have memory of some kind.
Okay, well, let me go on record right here.
Do it.
With this. Speaking of science. Do you remember floppy disks?
Yes.
Do you know how they worked at all?
I mean, I think I do. I mean, I remember that the metal part was pulled back so that the disk could be accessed, because otherwise it would be damaged. So once it was put into the computer, that metal part was pulled back, and then the disk spun, and then it was read. But I don't remember the exact way
information was recorded on it.
I don't. I was too little to remember how that happened.
And I'm not. This is not like my area of science, but it was done through electromagnetism.
Oh, okay. That makes a lot of sense.
So that's energy.
Yeah.
So that's how data can be put in crystals. It's how data is put on our thumb drives.
Right.
That is how data is stored on hard drives. It's metal. Metal is a rock.
Yeah.
Water has polarity. That
metal
is the thing that makes. Oh gosh.
Bruh.
How dare you?
What? Water has polarity.
Yes, it does.
Which is why it forms the crystalline structures the way it does. And I'm not a hydrologist. Although, let me tell you what, in college, there was a point when I thought, can I just make this my major? It was the coolest thing. I happened to have a biology professor who was brilliant. I have actually had a few. And
you gotta keep it all hydrated.
Yeah. Water is really, really amazing. But where I'm going with this is that with the polarity, there is electrical conductiveness. Water is highly conductive. Highly conductive.
Yeah, this is going to be a really important point.
It stands to reason that the conductivity of water would in some way be usable for transmission of data or memory, which is what I mean. Data is memory.
Right. Correct.
So,
Correct.
and the fact that oh my gosh, the things that we can do with science. They can put a ton of data into a little itty bitty ship of what is the word I was going to use?
Chip?
No, a piece of DNA.
Oh,
basically.
Strand
of DNA there that works, right. It's crazy. Technically, there should be ways they're working on it where we can have data embedded in our cells, in our blood. I mean, there already is. That's what DNA is. God embedded code in our cells.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's the memory of the ages. That's what our DNA is. It's your grandparents' story all the way,
I love that
from from Noah all the way down. It's kind of crazy. We compartmentalize things so much in life that sometimes we don't see the bleed over we should.
That's a problem with modern Western mentality, is that while there's definitely merit to it and there's definitely uses for it, the fact that disciplines are not, especially now, wasn't so much that when things were free range and they were still organic, but now things are specifically impeded from crossover. And I really believe, sorry, I shouldn't say I think, I'm convinced is a better way to say this. I'm convinced that because things are so compartmentalized, things are not allowed to be multidisciplinary, that people don't find truth easily. Truth is intentionally hidden that way.
With compartmentalization, I just think of any large government agency. Take Lockheed Martin. You only know the only part is the part that you work on. You have no idea of what, whatever, say you're making the space rover. You don't know what the whole thing, the end result is. You're working on the tire. That's all you know about is the tire. That works very well in the military industrial complex because people only know their tiny little bit of the jigsaw puzzle. Nobody sees the whole picture, or very few people see the big picture. And so secrecy is built in to the system that way. And I think you're right. There's a lot of that. And I think that's why too that
that's why you can walk into a doctor's office and not really be attended to, and the doctor walk right out, and you I have more questions now than I did when you freaking came in the door. What's going on here?
Well, I was thinking more of when they try to make it a debate between God and science. So it's God or it's science. No, man, God made science. It is God and science.
Right.
And one does not cancel out the other at all.
I mean, the 2019 Fluey Patui should have taught you that the science is not anything else more than Science Inc., right? And there is no, I mean, for the most part, there is no more room for science to be practiced like it was intended to be practiced.
Right. It is no longer the act of observation.
Right. And the problem is
doing experiments that can be
repeated.
Thank you. Repeated. Gosh. Yeah. Just when Shelley's brain is tired.
There was another word you're looking for, though, that have repeatability or something like that. But I mean, how it's what I said at the beginning. Why would if science is inextricably linked to spirituality, why what else would make more sense than when I mean, where did science come from? Science came from monks practicing, trying to understand their world, trying to make sense of nature, trying to understand what God had created. Like that's where the scientific method was birthed. It wasn't birthed in some laboratory. The laboratory came long after
The
these men
laboratories are
and women in
resolved.
isolation were trying to understand God's grand purpose and design. So,
His
I mean,
creation.
and that's why
Well,
it's, I mean,
see,
it is inextricably linked to spirituality. I mean,
there's that thing though where a scientist will say, I don't know anything about spirituality. That's not my thing. It's they equate materialism with science.
Right.
And so, science and materialism and spiritualism and never the twain shall meet, except that that's not really how it is. How it really is everything is so intertwined. And if we, have your specialty, absolutely, but in the end, you can be a molecular biologist all day long, but you still have a soul that still enjoys music or still thinks something is pretty and it brings a smile to your face. Not everything is not all concrete, just like everything isn't all ethereal.
Right.
There's balance. The world is multifaceted.
I wouldn't even necessarily call it bleed over. I would just say that that's just the way things are, and we use terms. Wow, man, thank you, Holy Spirit. We use terms like bleed over because we misunderstand God's design. I mean, that word shouldn't exist, but it exists because we have bad theology. Whoo, man, I'm preaching to myself. Holy crap. So I want to,
because we compartmentalize so much, we don't even recognize that we do it.
Exactly. It's so ingrained in our culture and in our, I mean, it is the Western veil. Like that essentially is the Western veil, right?
I mean, it is postmodernism to a T. Yeah.
No kidding. And as a kind of a anecdotal, I guess it is anecdotal. As an anecdotal portion of this, I would say also that as we lead into our next topic, by the way, which is all about water's regenerating or healing power. Yeah, regenerating as well. We will see very clearly that if science were just science, then scientists wouldn't have any problems accepting it, right? And the reason that words like a bleed over have to exist is because scientists refuse to work in more than one realm. And what am I getting at? Well, in the next topic, in this topic that I'm just about to bring up, the problem with water memory for a lot of people was that they were offended by the fact that they were dealing with the molecular, and they refused to deal with the quantum. Right. And so the quantum they found to be offensive as having anything to do with biology. But I mean, honestly, if I didn't believe in God, I mean, freaking quantum is voodoo, man. Quantum is bloody voodoo. If I don't believe in God, it's creepy as can be. I mean, it's creepy even when you do believe in God. It is super creepy.
It definitely makes things different, but things act different, super large and super small.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think we see the hand of God in both of those. Louis Giglio and Passion. They don't go by Passion Church anymore, but whatever they did, the whole Passion movement. Back, oh gosh, 15 years ago, 18 years ago, Giglio put out a CD series. That one of them was "How Great Is Our God," and oh gosh, what was the other one called? I'll have to look real quick. These videos, one of them deals with seeing God in the macro, and one is seeing the hand of God in the micro.
Yeah.
And I really, they were some of my favorite videos. I think I might still have them like in my garage because nobody uses DVDs anymore. Now you just watch it on YouTube, you know.
Oh man, yeah.
I know. It's like, oh, how sad. How great is our God? And what's the other one? Indescribable. That's the other one. Those two teachings, if you have not watched them, please go watch them. They'll blow your mind. Doesn't matter that they're from like 2012 or whatever. No, probably before that.
Oh man, there's some old teachings that are really cool. Go look up Chuck Missler if you haven't read any or watched anything by him.
Yeah, I mean Chuck is great too, but just the whole quanta thing that you were talking about made me think of both the quanta and then also the cosmic, and how God is so evident in both of them that's why they make us so uncomfortable.
Yeah. That's exactly right. That's what it comes down to, right? We're not. These are things that make us uncomfortable, and I've told you this before, Shell, and I don't know if I've said this, on the podcast or any point, but I love our podcast because it makes me uncomfortable. It makes me confront a lot of things that I have preconceived notions about, and I go, oh, I don't think I know how I feel about that, and I get less afraid to confront it, right? Because I didn't tell you this, but I had a conversation with somebody I just met, and we had like this really deep conversation. It was very surprising. She's a CPS worker, and I just happened to be there on site, and we ended up talking for like an hour and a half. We didn't even see the person that was there because they weren't there, or whatever. And we were just chatting and chatting and chatting. She didn't have anything to do. I didn't have anything to do, so we were just chatting. And man, I just started breaking down like. And she's very well educated, very theologically educated, but she didn't even know about like the giants or where demons really come from, why there's a hierarchy and stuff like that, and so you come to a point where you're forced up against a wall and you're like, oh, how does this work? But she said something that kind of tripped me up. Maybe you'll know this answer. But she said that in Arabic, apparently the name of God is more precise than the Hebrew. And I was like, I'm going to take a hard pass on that one and have some real big conflict with it. But I'm curious to know why, because I don't understand why she would say that. And I would like to know why, And I think certainly at least a year ago, I would have been terrified to know the answer previously. But man, you will know the truth, and the truth shall set you free.
Right.
It is so
I don't think that's true, but we'll definitely look into that because that's a very interesting claim.
I would like to know why. And I asked her, is that in the Quran? Is that why? And she goes, yeah, I think it is. And I'm like, well, you should probably know that because that's a pretty bold statement to make. Like, if you're sure about that, great, lambast it on. But I want to understand why. Anyway, so water memory. Let's take a trip to... No. That's up. Sorry, I can't do any French song that I can think of off the top of my head. So, let's go to France. Let's go to Paris. No, I don't know what city in France it was, but there was a gentleman in the 1980s who was named Jaque Benveniste, and I'm probably pronouncing that terribly. Benveniste. I don't know. Whatever. French is not my favorite thing. It's not my forte. It's my crappy. Don't I was so bad. It was so crappy. Like, that was so cringe. I said it and I was like, man, I'm cringing for myself. He had this radical concept and was trying to introduce it in science. That did it get you?
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Ay.
Um,
Proceed.
yes, proceed. That water indeed did have memory. And if I remember his experiment right, the one that I remember off the top of my head, forgive me, guys. There was a documentary that Shelley and I watched about this, which was absolutely fascinating and holds some serious weight
cool.
because the wasn't Professor Luc Montagnier, wasn't he the Nobel Prize winner in, what was it, 2000? Was it 12?
Earlier, yeah.
2004? I can't remember the date off the top of my head. That's neither here nor there. Let me get to
he had
Jaque.
been a Nobel recipient.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was
Well,
previously a Nobel
where
recipient.
Ricky's going with this is that, like,
there's some validity.
There's a ton of pushback against this, and
This concept,
like, to the point where this Nobel laureate is treated like ye old redheaded stepson.
Receives no funding for trying to find out whether water has memory or not, and he's forced to work in like a space.
There's something about this particular study.
Yeah,
people just don't like, but it's fascinating. And when you look at it, it seems like super legit. I could not find anything about it.
It was so airtight that it was like, I don't even like, I wouldn't even know what question. I mean, I'm a layman, so I'm not going to pretend that I'm scientific on any level.
Yeah, but like this is double blind, everything, the control, everything about this experimentation. And it's totally replicatable.
Yeah, that's the word you're looking for.
It's flipping amazing.
Yeah, let me lay it out for you guys real quick. I'll try and go through it.
There must not be money in it, which might be why
well, that's exactly what they conclude, right? Although there could be, but let's get to that here in a second. So Jaque Benveniste was a scientist in the 1980s, very, very well respected until he came up to this water memory thing. And if I remember the experiment correct,
wasn't he actually a doctor?
Sorry, we can't hear you.
Doctor. Sorry, wasn't he a medical doctor?
Okay, there you go. Okay.
I think
he had some legit credentials. I didn't remember what it was exactly. But anyway, he did an experiment on rats because they have, if I remember right, their hearts have an allergic reaction to egg yolks. So he would put the egg yolk on there, and it would cause the heart to, have this allergic reaction. Well, if I remember it right, he diluted the water that it had the egg yolk in it. I may be wrong about this, but I just remember that essentially there was no egg yolk there, and he used water that had been around or contained the egg yolk and put it on the heart of this rat, and it had the same reaction, having no egg yolk physically present at all in this sample. So essentially he was ostracized. He was, he tried to have the people from Nature come out so he could publish his work. They came, like the editor-in-chief came out and looked at his work, and he was able to reproduce this thing one after another until finally something that they asked him to do, he failed on, and they were like, aha, see, you're wrong. You're a liar. It's not true.
Right.
And he was so ostracized by the scientific community after that Professor Luc Montagnier says that when he picked Benveniste's work back up, that he, in his mind, that he had been such a powerhouse in the scientific world, Dr. Benveniste, that the only thing he could explain him having died from, because he died shortly after, before he was able to work on his findings again and try and reproduce this all over again. He died, and he said that he died because he was essentially super depressed and ostracized, totally outcast.
That happens.
Yeah, I mean, not that he committed suicide, right? But just that he was just died
No,
of
but
heartache.
so in the word says that hope deferred causes the heart. Is as rottenness to the bones.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what hope
yeah,
deferred is. I mean,
yeah,
and that to me sounds very much like rottenness to the bone that you waste away.
yeah, totally.
So I definitely can see that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to make sense to me. It's not a point I would even argue. So, Professor Luc Montagnier, who fast forward to several years later, he is the Nobel laureate, wins the Nobel Prize. And I don't remember what year it was, but you can look it up. He passed away, actually, if I'm not mistaken, he just passed away last year. So it's kind of like in his memory. He worked with HIV patients' blood, and in the plasma, he found an electromagnetic signal that was present in the blood of HIV patients. Well, he started using Jaque Benveniste's same hypothesis and experimentation, and essentially took the DNA from these HIV patients and diluted it, put it in a beaker or a container of some sort, and diluted it heavily with water, right? And so he eventually, to not bore you guys to death, he eventually diluted this substance so much that there was not a single molecule left in the sample. Okay. Right. So in some of the samples, not all of them, he did leave some in some of the samples, and that was precisely that, so he would have a placebo, and so that he would have an actual legit diluted quantity of the HIV virus. Okay. He had 10 placebo and 10 highly diluted solutions. Excuse me. So how did he go about testing this? So he takes all these solutions, both placebo and non, and he records the electromagnetic symbol and turns it into a digitized form. Okay. Now, he took 2 test tubes that were completely diluted samples, and they continued to emit this electromagnetic frequency. So once he did this, he uploaded this information from these completely 1000% zero molecule of HIV samples online, and asks the Italian University Benevento, which specializes in molecular biology. Okay, note, this is important. We're going to get into quantum, and we're going to be dealing with molecular. So it's important in your brain to keep the two separate. Okay, so they specialize in molecular biology. Well, he takes the data that was sent and digitized, and in Italy, I guess he's like the head there at the lab at the university, receives this digital signal in Italy from France. Okay, mind you, there's some serious distance in between both.
And there really is.
It's crazy. He puts some water, just regular water, in a test tube. Okay, and then in that test tube, he puts into like a small metallic barrel and covers it really well to make sure that there's no was it radioactive? Yeah, it was an anti-radiation chamber. That's exactly what it was, to avoid any potential distortion. So what does he do? Well, he plays the music of the electromagnetic digitized signal that was sent from France into this water. Okay. And then I think it was about for an hour.
I forgot about the resonance, the sound part of this.
Yeah.
It's such a cool experience.
I mean, all of this, that's why this is like, it's so crazy, because all of it's like, dude, you digitized the freaking thing. Like, it wasn't even in the same medium. And
right.
It's mind-boggling. Okay. So then they use the PCR machine, which basically, if I'm remembering right, basically shakes up the water intensely. I am not a scientist, obviously, guys. And then they put basic building blocks called nucleotides, which is just the basic organic material for DNA. Okay, protection
It's very
in this water,
little bits of protein.
but they're just pieces. They're not. There's no
Right.
order to them. There's no structure.
Right.
There's no foundation even for them to do anything. And they also include what's called a polymerase. I think that's what it's called. Shell.
Polymerase.
And they use that as the catalyst, essentially, to stimulate these pieces. Okay, so when they put these nucleotides and they allow this polymerase to work as the catalyst, after having played this music for this unsuspecting water, the water
Just
freaking
water. Just water.
The water freaking reforms the DNA, the entire sequence. It reforms it. And then wait,
Of
it
that
gets
virus.
better. It gets better. Okay. So at first it doesn't happen, but when they take the DNA fragments and they introduce it, the DNA begins to form with this catalyst present. Okay. Now, so we already have here an amazing feat, because across this ridiculous space and through different mediums, we have
and that's the thing.
That's
right.
crazy.
Right. To change up
So
the mediums the way they do. See, the only thing that makes sense of all of that to me, again, is electricity. Electricity can neither be created nor destroyed, just
which is where we're going, actually.
transformed.
So that's already beyond belief. But then what do they do? They reverse the exact same experiment back to France. Digitized signal from an actual physical molecularly formed DNA strand, blah 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 blah. Okay, and they send it back to France. Guess how freaking identical this DNA strand was to the original. What do you remember the percentage, Shell? I have it on hand. Do you remember how much it was?
I think it's pretty much all of it.
It was 98% identical.
That's crazy.
I mean, in scientific terms, on scientific levels, 98% accuracy is madness. I mean, it's
when you have something with as many steps as this process is, really,
and I should mention, the precautions that they take at the very beginning too are insane. When they go into record, they're like, "Hey, we're not sure how this is going to work because we've never had any electronic equipment in the lab. So please turn off your phones." They took their batteries out of their phones to make sure. We're talking
and they
back in 2012.
They ended up making it so that they could only record with one certain camera, because it had a really low
super low
emission coming out, and so it wouldn't interfere. Like, it's really it's a very impressive.
I will post this in the notes because it's very worth watching.
It is, and you it's very easy to find if you put in Luc
Montagnier.
How did you say his name? Montagnier,
I think that's
Montagnier, and water memory, like you pull them right up.
Yeah. So then they try to figure out, they're like, what the heck is actually happening? This is crazy. Like, how is this possible? Well, in the documentary, an individual, Mark Henry, who's a chemical and quantum physicist, basically explains that although the matter is removed, the physical matter is removed, the electromagnetic property or
signal.
Signal. I don't even know what the heck else to call it. Yeah, the electromagnetic signal. That's exactly right. Is trapped within oxygen molecules that act like a barrier. They automatically form this little ring, and they trap the signal in there.
See,
but
the
it's
polarity
because water
of
is the medium, or otherwise they wouldn't stay there. That's insane. Okay, so there's no matter, but what's trapped in this little molecular, I don't know. I think they're just electrons. In fact, I don't remember if they were oxygen molecules or just electrons. I think they're just electrons. But nonetheless, the electromagnetic signal gets trapped in there with no physical material. And this is what they call coherent domain. Go look this up. It's really cool. So what does this mean? And this is where we're going to really get to it. The healing properties of water. This is where we're going into this right now. This is why I gave you guys this build up. And this is why we're talking. What is up, CTDW fam? Hey guys, I just want to let you know we have just finished up this episode. This is the first half though, so we will be releasing the other half Wednesday of next week for non-subscribers. If you are a subscriber, you already have full access to this complete episode. We will be having another episode drop next week as well, which is a Cosmovision about Kat Von D. So stay tuned, guys. God bless. Love you guys. Lates. Thank you for watching this episode of the Christian Theological Dark Web. For questions or comments, please email us at thechristiantheologicaldarkweb@gmail.com. If you'd like to support us, please look for the Patreon link in the description. This has been another production of CTDW Studios. Thank you, and God bless.